Jungian analysis is a period of time devoted to the unfolding of the self.
I see myself as an analyst to create an empty, open moment for a client and an empty, open space. A place where the only thing that's being looked for is the client's discovery of their own true, deep inner voice and their own true, deep inner agenda for living.
We're always becoming something. That was essential to Jung's idea. And we're always afraid to become. It's a struggle between staying the same because it's safe and taking a leap. In analysis, really, you're trying to look at the barriers to taking the leap forward.
There is not a formula for deep work. There's not a formula for analytic work. It is not the counseling kind of quick fix where we say to people, if you do these 4 things, you will have a better life, you will make more money, and you will be happier. Because substantial change in terms of one's relationship with oneself takes time and takes hard work.
The analyst isn't someone who stands apart and knows all the answers. What's wonderful and what I find life-giving is the idea that there is this third in the room, which is the unconscious, because the unconscious has a wisdom of its own.
If we're just in touch with ourselves and allow the symbol and the archetype within us to express and to just be and to evolve and develop, then the healing comes. And then we know where our journey is in life and where we're meant to go and what we're meant to be.
The North Pacific Institute for Analytical Psychology is a nonprofit organization committed to research in the field of analytical psychology and to education founded on the work of Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung.
Jungian psychology is not just psychological, it's also spiritual, psychospiritual, if you will. And its whole purpose is to have people discover meaning, not in just this moment, but a sense of the trajectory of meaning, the arc of meaning from their birth to their death.
It's always a process. You know, you've never got it all down. You know, you're on your deathbed and struggling with something the last moment. Give me 5 more minutes, you know.
Carl Jung's life and work spanned the transition from the Victorian world to the postmodern world. He was moved by the depth of human suffering and how that suffering affected the world.
Jungian psychology often sounds esoteric to the public because it uses these strange words like anima and animus and shadow and self and archetype. But it's really a meat and potato psychology. The real business of life is to find meaning and joy and to face our suffering and transform it and to feel like we've done more to bring light into this world than to bring darkness. We've left a footprint that matters.
We follow nature as a guide, and what the doctor then does is less a question of treatment than of developing the creative possibilities latent in the patient.
It's through the creation that we tap into this non-verbal dimension of reality, which is the way the self or the soul expresses. The person's life force, the archetypes that live within them come forth in their expressions, just like they do in dreams. And then that's where the healing comes from.
The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul.
The dream is just when the conscious mind is turned off. It's what the mind's doing all the time. Our fundamental mental life is all in terms of fantasy and metaphor and imagery. It just so happens that at nighttime we get this little glimpse when we shut up, you know, when we're quiet.
It is surely better to know that your worst enemy is right there in your own heart.
Someone asked Jung, how do we lighten the collective shadow? And Jung said, work to lighten your own.
Jung's idea of the shadow is about the imperfect parts of the person. And the shadow is the greatest challenge. So we're always struggling with fending off imperfection. And a Jungian approach is to try to embrace the imperfection.
God is an infinite sphere or circle, whose center is everywhere, and circumference nowhere.
People, even though they're not attending churches or synagogues or mosques or whatever, almost every human that you see in your office is spiritual. And this is one of Jung's ideas. And spiritual in a sense that it doesn't follow a particular dogma. People are craving for that sense of depth and meaning, and and bonding and some relationship to some divine principle in some nourishing way.
The unrelated human being lacks wholeness, for one can achieve wholeness only through the soul. The soul is therefore the very essence of relationship.
So it's really just working with the meaning of the totality of the human person. They come in wanting to be fixed, but that's never enough. Even the person who says they want to be fixed, they're always wanting more.
We have seen an increased demand in the Pacific Northwest for analysts and Jungian and analytical psychology education. The Institute is raising funds for an educational center that can provide in-depth training of future analysts.
My goal in entering this training was to become an excellent analyst. And it became very clear to me that is a lifelong process. But the reward is a deepened sense, an increased sense of competence in my capacity to shepherd someone else going through an analytic process. It's exhilarating and intimidating to be able to learn material that you really want to learn and be surrounded by other people who love this work, who are deeply committed to it and deeply interested in it.
That's a very intensive process. If you've got people who are postdoctoral level, they've trained in social work or psychology or psychiatry, and then beyond that they've got to do 5 to 7 years of analysis, classwork, training. That's an enormous commitment.
You know, that old joke about what do you get when you play country music backward? You get your wife back, you get your job back, you get your dog back. That's what happens when you finish the training.
Contributions will help create a scholarship fund, providing greater accessibility to qualified candidates.
Right now in the current economy, by the time people get done paying for their supervision, their analysis, and those training hours and classwork, they've spent $100,000+ more than they would have spent for their graduate education.
The Institute also offers a 2-year study course, Seminars for Professionals.
It's the only program I know, at least in the Pacific Northwest, that offers the level of depth without committing yourself to become an analyst. I was a social worker and had had a fair amount of schooling, and this has been very different from that. There's no way the other kind of learning, where I had a preconceived idea and I was there to get a degree, was ever going to really reveal my inner self to me.
We are raising funds for a low-fee clinic and multicultural outreach program, establishing the Institute as a center of healing.
We can then give back to the community. We can offer something that will be long-lasting. We like to give a legacy. Our plan is to have a clinic where people can come for low-cost psychotherapy and get the benefit of what we have to offer as Jungians.
We can broaden the class and ethnic accessibility so that regardless of what community you live in the Northwest, you could find a doorway into a really meaningful Jungian analytic experience. So my hope that this becomes a training facility that trains people from a wide variety of communities, African American, Hispanic, Eurasian, Asian, Native American, the whole global chorus of humanity.
You have the opportunity to contribute to the well-being of our community. We need your support. Together we can build a strong foundation, an educational center for spiritual and psychological health and growth.
It is all too clear that if the individual is not really renewed in spirit, society cannot renew itself, because society is the sum of individuals.